this is incredible. I really like this.
Oh, thank you.
I'm free and it feels like my heart's exploding, like I could touch the sky. All the plans that I have made finally become real.
This originally started as a project from somebody at a farmer's market who dissed Star Trek and the fact that I had a small little 4-inch model of a ship sitting at a farmer's market above some vegetables and told me that Star Trek and farmer's markets don't mix together. And this was my response the following year, is to build a farmer's market with in the form of the bridge where vegetables at one time sat here where the buttons were on these 3 original sections right here. And after I retired the bridge from farmer's market, I decided to go ahead and build the whole entire bridge, which ended up being these sections over here were built first to the correct geometric design from blueprints from the original set in the 60s. Once I had those built, I rebuilt the bridge sections from the farmers markets to match them so that everything fits together on the single structure. I was sent a script a couple months ago from a fellow in Austin who has made some fan-based production. Most of his videos that he does is digitally based with digital sets and with green screen, and he was very interested in a script on a story that he'd been wanting to do for quite some time, and he wants to use this as the bridge of one of his starships. Unfortunately, in his script and storyline, the ship ends up getting destroyed, which I'm not even going to go into the details of it. It's a very cool story that links in very interesting ideas through multiple episodes and into the movies as well. You've actually made all of my videos that are on the screens right here, and made the videos and the sound effects, because I don't have no idea how to do that kind of stuff. The center clock, the chronometer that is in the helm station, was a gift to me a couple months ago, and that is the exact style of clock that was used on the set from the 60s. I had a very, very good tutor from a guy that worked at Radio Shack who taught me the electronics and circuitry that goes into making all these LED flashes. There is no computer that controls any of this. This is all physical circuits.
It's like flip-flops and counters and that kind of...
That makes it flash. Then other than that, the whole entire thing was my work.
Absolutely.
Oh, Joey,
over the period of several years.
Talking about the plastic, the history, and where you got it, and...
Oh, this stuff.
Right.
This is called lenticular moire, and this plastic is made by a plastic company out in New Jersey. And offhand, I don't remember the name of the company, but that company made this stuff way back in the 60s, and the same material was used behind the transporter room on the original sets. It was used on one of the little squares that you see often in the turbo lift elevator when they're coming from the bridge. It was used in some of the main beams in the corridors up there and lit up almost a greenish color like that one over there. And this stuff ended up costing almost 13 bucks a yard.
Wow.
Which was some very cool stuff. It's fragile, but it's almost like maybe 15 mil plastic. It's very, very neat. Not a single piece of it is the same, no matter how you cut it.
Cool.
But it just disperses the light really neat. I use this to make it more like this was like some sort of gel circuitry up here, just because I don't have the money right now to buy actual monitors and screens to put in there. So this was my next idea. Versus transparencies with pictures, this is what I came up with on a cheap solution to how to fill those monitors up there. This is the 2-part rosin that I just got over at Hobby Lobby. And these were actual button molds for jewelry making. I don't know exactly what people do with this stuff for hobbies, but those were Those were actual molds. This was a candy mold that they had down there, which actually ended up being a really nice shape for buttons. And then anything else that I could find that was small enough to fill in and make some different size buttons. This was a square from something that I saved from something and ended up filling those up with rosin just to make more buttons.
Cool.
So I've got this whole side done. I still got to pour almost 300 more over there, where every single one of them gets poured, sanded down, and then drilled so that it fits over the light. On the status, on the show itself, all these ever did in the 60s was show red alert. I'm going with the premise that would be a ship status, and inside of these I have LED light bulbs, and they're remote controlled where I can actually change them to any color that I want. Of course, status screens mean everything is going fine on the ship. It switches to yellow alert when there's an emergency coming up, and then of course it goes up into the red alert when there is indeed an emergency. Usually the ship would be running at green. I'm rather fond of the blues, but these were all just remote control LED light bulbs in there. The whole entire thing is low voltage and LEDs, and could almost run off of battery power if I needed it to.
That's amazing.
It consumes very, very little power.
Now, how'd you make this ceiling up here?
The ceiling itself was an interesting thing to try to design without any blueprints on how it could be suspended, because it's a 27-foot room that has no rafters or beams in the ceiling, so everything had to be self-supporting, and it's partially suspended from the ceiling or the main rafters up there in the building. And this ended up being very, very lightweight. The satellite dish is hanging from the structure of the main building itself. The rest of this is just styrofoam. It's very, very lightweight, and it was easy to cut, and it was easy to paint, and it was sort of somewhat forgivable if you made mistakes, and you could sort of bend it and flex it.
That's awesome.
But it's all lightweight, so nothing, and it hangs on top of the satellite dish, so it's lightweight where it does not bend and deform the satellite dish itself, and it does not add more weight to this part of the ceiling over here, which is sort of self-sustaining.
Okay, so
That right there was a geometrical nightmare to take this 20-sided. It actually ends up being 10 stations. There's 10-sided circle split in half to a 20-sided circle, both on the floor, on the stations, and then when it gets into the ceiling, it ends up being a 20-sided circle up here as well. And it became just, I'm not a mathematician or a carpenter or a civil engineer of any kind, so this was very, very hard for a farmer to try to design and then build it to where it also looks halfway decent and halfway evenly spaced, to where it's cosmetically attractive.
right.
And I went with the original bridge sets never had a ceiling that was ever seen, except for one or two brief shots, and they were just absolutely just this horrible looking white empty dome. And I needed it to have a little bit more artistic design to it and make it look appealing.
This is
and
amazing.
What I ended up doing, it looks sort of futuristic, but it also looks very Eiffel Tower 1800s steampunk Victorian, in my opinion.
Right.
All it needs would be some rivets sticking out of it, and it would be almost steampunk
Right.
look. But the ceiling turned out nice.
It did. This is awesome.
Give the illusion that it's a dome, a rounded dome, but yet have room where I can put some lights up there to light it up a little bit.
Right.
And that was just my artistic license of what the ceiling of the bridge might end up looking like.
I think this is fabulous. You know, to me, the thing that's so amazing is that this looks every bit as incredible in person as it does on video, and vice versa. I've known Joey for what, 5-6 years, something like that now, and it's just been amazing because the first time I met him, he had this he had his set at the farmer's market, and like he said, he had the fruits and vegetables in it. He was gracious enough to let me help in a very small way, doing some videos and that kind of thing. And I am just absolutely blown away at what this thing has just evolved into. And you walk into this and you swear you're right on the bridge of the Starship Enterprise. You're there. This is it. And I don't know if you're wanting to keep this the world's best kept secret or not. But do you want me to reveal where this is located?
No location, but there's a lot of people that is aware of it.
Right.
There's a lot of people aware of it. It is not exact to the original sets. I had no desire to recreate every detail of the original sets. I first of all, funding just isn't there.
Totally understand that.
Everything that went into this was actually almost all call number 2 lumber from the lumber yard up there, as cheap and or inexpensive as I could get it. And the electronics from the 60s was just impossible for me to recreate, so I had to update it just a little bit, and I got it out of that 60s look. Which the 60s look does not appeal to me, so it's a little bit upgraded, but I kept the general spirit of the Bridge of the Enterprise with this. It's 3/4 scale. The real sets were quite a bit bigger, but I just don't have room to build that whole entire large scale thing.
Like I said,
which realistically, I don't think in future space travels, a control room for a spaceship would ever even be this big.
Right, I agree with that.
And I tried to keep it as realistic as possible, which is what Star Trek really and truly was aimed at, was realistic science, realistic situations, realistic space travel, as best as they could imagine in a science fiction realm. So that's where I incorporated a little bit kind of realism in this, but in no way was it ever meant to be an exact duplicate.
Sure.
It was a duplicate in spirit.
I'm going to tell you, it feels like an exact duplicate in here. There's no doubt about it. It's amazing. And so here you have it, folks. Best kept secret in the United States, and I'm privileged to be standing in here and know this man in person. And I love him like a brother. I'm going to miss him when I go to Hawaii. But we're going to stay in touch, and he might come up for a vacation.
That's right.
sometime.
That's right.
I'm free.